That concludes the discussion of the second motion of 5. We now move to the third motion submitted by Councillor Bulat. Can I ask Councillor Bulat to move and speak to her motion as set out on pages 6 and 7 of the Council agenda? Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Claudia, one of our local residents in Cambridgeshire, asks us today, why isn't it considered an NHS emergency when you lost your tooth bridge and your tooth canals are exposed? I'm just waiting until I can't deal with the pain anymore, just to have the extraction after. They booked me after a month of when this happened, which is ridiculous. I paid all my prescriptions and I'm trying to survive with the new increased prices. This is an experience that too many people across the UK can relate to. Let's hear from another resident today. In 2021, I needed to see my dentist. I phoned to make an appointment and they said I was 2 days over the 3-year limit that I hadn't been to the dentist. I explained that I was getting over agoraphobia, which is why I hadn't been to the dentist in a while. The receptionist asked her colleague if there was anything they could do, and she was told no, I would have to come back as a private patient. The silly thing is there are 2 dentists in a 5-minute walk of my flat, and both are private. This was Helen's experience, and I can definitely relate to that. Private dentists are within a very short walk to my flat, but no NHS dentist is available in the whole district to take on new patients. And finally, let's hear one other story from Karen. And she says to us today, I've had toothache for over 2 years and I just cannot afford to get it sorted. The last time I went, I spent £70 on an emergency appointment, waited 20 minutes to be seen, just be given a prescription, which I then had to pay for. So just under £100 overall. 2 years on, I still have the same problem, but with everything going up and the price of electricity, I can't afford to do it. I don't mind paying if I had the money, but I feel they just can't charge way so much for the average person. Something needs to change, she tells us, and I think most of us agree. Something does need to change. I met Simon, who is in the public gallery here today with us. Welcome to the County Council, Simon. In my local division in Abbey a few months ago. He's part of the Toothless in Huntingdon campaign group, which is part of the wider Toothless in England campaign. The group collected so many lived experience testimonies, and I would like to have enough time today to go through more of them, but I can't do so within the 5 minutes because they really do highlight the difficult experiences that our residents have every day. From Duxford to March, from St. Neots to Ely, and across the city of Cambridge and beyond, there are hundreds of our residents with similar experiences to those that I read to you today. And it is clear to everyone who cannot afford a private dentist that access to NHS dentists has been rapidly declining in the last few years. The Cross-Party Health and Social Care Committee in Parliament report on the NHS Dentistry concludes that NHS Dentistry faces, and I quote, a crisis of access and calls on government to, I quote, undertake urgent and fundamental reform. Of course, we can't change everything locally. It will take national government to act and to work with us locally. Above all, we need to call on government to reform the units of dental activity contracts, which are pushing more and more NHS dentists into private practice. However, I do hope this motion proposes some pragmatic and local level ideas as well, including discussing how we can work more closely with our integrated care boards who have a new responsibility to commission NHS dentistry to improve local services in Cambridgeshire and address the inequalities of access in dental care. Working with campaigns such as Toothless in England, resident campaign groups to actually bring those local lived experiences, the everyday experiences of our residents to any discussion around policy on dental health in our country. And our county more specifically. To continue working with Cambridgeshire schools, promote education on oral health, and where possible, focusing on prevention, targeting those public health messages to children and our young people across the county. And finally, encourage the integrated care boards to explore the feasibility of mobile dentistry, like other counties have been exploring, especially in areas which are less served by public transport, and this is highly relevant to our large rural communities. If we're serious about prevention, we must all ask how we can actually best support our residents in what is currently an NHS dental crisis in our county, our region, and across the UK. So I hope this motion is not too controversial. I hope you can support this motion today and to make some progress towards having an NHS dentist for everyone. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Bulat. Do you have a seconder?
Yes, to be Councillor Sanderson.
Thank you, Councillor Saunderson. Councillor Howard.
Firstly, I'd like to thank my friend and colleague, Councillor Bulat, for bringing this forward and also for sharing those very moving testimonies about the difficulties of dentistry access in our county. I do wonder what sort of country we live in when for some time last year there was no dentist available on the NHS anywhere in the whole of Cambridgeshire. That dentistry is the second most common complaint to Health Watch in Cambridgeshire. That tooth decay is the most common reason for children aged 6 to 10 to be admitted to our hospitals. And the horror stories of people doing DIY dentistry, literally taking out their own teeth here in the 21st century. In Cambridge, we even had a refugee resident who found it easier to get dentistry by going back to Ukraine rather than seeking it within our county. Two of our region's Conservative MPs in a debate in Parliament said that, I quote, East Anglia is the largest dental desert in the UK. And in response to that debate, the British Dental Association said ministers have done little more than rearrange the deck chairs. This resolution says that current access to dentistry in Cambridgeshire is unacceptable. Now, I want to say I have some sympathy with our Integrated Care Board colleagues who only in the last weeks have taken over from the national framework responsibility for dentistry. And in discussion with them, we've said, we'll give you a bit of time to get hold of it and to take action and to make a difference. And I think that's the right thing as their partner for us to do. I also want to place on record, because I think we educate the public in these debates, as well as ourselves, that if you have an urgent dental crisis, if you ring NHS England's customer contact centre, you should be able to get an appointment, although you might have to go a hell of a long way in order to get there. But as Councillor Bulat says, this is about what we can do as a county council to turn the sentiments in this motion into action. We do have representation at different levels of the Integrated Care Board, and I think this resolution charges our representatives, members and officers to champion the cause of dentistry in their attendance. We will, as we have already, used our health scrutiny function in order to hold the local health service to account at the right time for the progress that needs to be made on dentistry. And I think it's fair to say that our work already in this area has helped bring forward the proposals for a dental school within the county. We will, working with my colleague Councillor Goodliffe, use our education function and our public health function to champion children's oral health. And we must recognise the recognition between poor oral health in children and poor health overall for them as children and in their future adult life. And we should, as Councillor Bulat says, work in partnership with community organisations within the county to try and promote the aims of this resolution. I congratulate what she's doing with Toothless in Huntingdon, but I also place on record my congratulations for Health Watch, who have made this a major issue and continue to advocate hard. And of course, this resolution obliges us as a council to make representations to government, and it is proper in that context for us to do so. I want to say on behalf of the Labour Party that as part of our Building an NHS Fit for the Future programme, we have pledged to provide an extra 700,000 urgent dental appointments nationally, to reform the NHS dental contract, which is at the heart of these problems, to recruit more dentists to areas with the most severe shortage, and to take action to protect children's teeth in the way I hope we can do in the meantime already here in Cambridgeshire. When you go online and look for a dentist and you click, it says, not accepting new patients. This resolution changes that around, and it says that we have no patience for not accepting.
Thank you for that. Councillor Bywater.
Yes, thank you very much, Chair. Thank you, Councillor Bulat, for bringing this motion. I am going to be supporting it. I just want to give some personal reflection and just a few comments, really. Approximately 27 years ago now, I was a lone police officer walking the beats of South Manchester on a particular dark night when I was seriously assaulted as a result of being recognised. And since that time, I've had serious issues with my own teeth. I lost a number of front teeth and damaged a large proportion of my other teeth. And since retiring from the police, it's been a cost that I've had to incur for my public service. That's cost me personally to look after my teeth. And only a couple of years ago, I received a very pleasant letter from my NHS dentist saying, thanks, but no thanks. Go and find your own private dental health care. So this is my own personal problems that I'm having. And this is echoed by many, many people that I speak to in my own community. Only last week, I was speaking to a chap who'd just come back from Turkey following some dental treatment. That he's going to go back for some more implants. So people are having to find, concerning alternatives to getting treatment within Huntingdonshire and the wider area. And my wife's also a paediatric nurse. She's worked on children's wards up and down the country, and more recently has been in Huntingdon working on Hollywood. And over the years there, she noticed a huge increase in the number of young children coming in. The lists were ever increasing about the oral health of our young people within the area. I think it's crucial to support our young people, and I welcome the comments regarding the schools and how we can support young people and educate them, because ultimately we're storing up a problem for the future if we don't look after our children's teeth. So my plea to members is to support this. I think we need to do everything we can to champion oral and dental healthcare, because I'm an example of if you don't get it right, you have years and years of issues, and that, trust me, is very expensive. Thank you.
Thank you for that, Councillor Slatter.
Thank you. Try not to duplicate what's been said already. Everybody in this room knows that there's a shortage of NHS dentists. And I say dentists, this is a people issue. Why are there dentists who cannot work for the NHS? It's not that they don't want to, but they cannot afford to. I expect there are also many people in this room who know dentists and have been hearing for years now the problems created by the contracts that they have. And how they essentially, a lot of practices do it at their own expense if they take in NHS NHS patients, despite the dire need for them. Some reference was made in our briefing to the fact that the Corporate Parenting Subcommittee wrote the year before last about this, because we were concerned about the initial dental check, which is a priority when a child comes into care. Because for those children come into care because of neglect, that will very likely be a neglected mouth. And if they don't get dental care, then they have lifelong problems with ugly teeth, deformed teeth, and embarrassment on top of their other problems. And clearly, as corporate parents, we are particularly concerned for them. We know that the problem lies with what central government is doing, and I won't repeat what has been said. It is a matter of lobbying nationally, but also of acting locally. And Councillor Howard has talked about the ICB, and that's quite right. There are some things that we can do as county councillors. We can look out for any opportunities to add to the training of people working in social care to include mouth care. This can be done without unleashing unqualified dentists on the population, of course. And there are courses and ways of doing this, and it may be something that come into the Social Care Academy. But hygienists who are appropriately trained to look after some of our more vulnerable residents, such as those with dementia or with learning disabilities, the sort of issues that make it almost impossible to get them to open their mouth, let alone look at their teeth. Suitable training for that, and suitable training for educating children in our schools, for whom we are also responsible. The presentations by somebody in a white coat in a school may well add just that extra bit of authority that your parents don't have. And just as somebody who was taught how to clean somebody else's teeth, I would certainly want them to learn how to use electric toothbrushes properly. None of my grandchildren seem to be able to, but it is a very different way of doing things. And just something so simple like that could prevent a lot of the development of dental caries. So we've got to watch out for our local opportunities where we can help get that basic care into the communities. And please, if our leaders can write to the government and our MPs can lobby at that level, I hope we can look our children in the eye a bit better when it comes to the care of their teeth. Cradle to grave missed out in 1948. They missed out the mouth and the feet, and we need to put that right.
Thank you for that. I have 9 more speakers, and that does strike me that we are rowing in the same direction on this. Councillor van der Ven, you're next.
Thank you. First of all, I wanted to thank Cambridgeshire Community Services, CCS, one of our NHS health partners, who are responsible for children. They treat us 4 times a year to a quarterly liaison group meeting for our Adults in Health Scrutiny Committee. This has given us a chance over several years to enhance our understanding of this problem. So that's an invaluable resource to our scrutiny work. And as Councillor Howard said, we are planning to bring another scrutiny item on dentistry when the ICB feels that it can work with us to do some meaningful work. In terms of the ICB, they've been given responsibility without any funding. We've heard that story before. That is a really serious problem. And I know, you know, they've told us openly, this is an absolutely daunting responsibility. And then I wanted to mention also a report that was sent to us earlier this year by Cambridge Refugee Resettlement Campaign, CAMRAG, who produced a report called Painful Misalignment, which was commissioned in response to what they encountered on behalf of refugees in Cambridgeshire who desperately needed access to dental work. It's a comprehensive report. I urge you to take a look at it. It's so good. Health Watch, I think, took it on as their foundational point of reference. And finally, yes, contracts and workforce development. Without that, we can't promise appointments. So I look forward to the next government's focus on workforce development. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Councillor Tierney.
Thank you, Chairman. I think I must be getting cynical in my old age, and I sometimes wonder what the point of these motions is. Not that I disagree with it. I know residents who have made the same complaints to me. I've suffered it myself. I'm a little disappointed to hear so much mention of vulnerable groups. Toothache is just as bad, whether you're a vulnerable group or not, particularly if you can't get it treated and they're trying to work. It affects everyone. So I don't think we need to focus on special groups. My problem is that motions like this, they talk about making better representation to government, like any government listens, you know, like the next one will, like any of them have in any genuine way. They talk about getting one acronymed organisation to better scrutinise another one. It's nonsense. I would like to see some actual solutions proposed in a motion like this, but we don't propose them because either we don't know a solution or we're too scared to actually have the discussion, which is the same discussion as previous mentioned motions, which is an ever-growing demand and a limited pot to pay for it from. So I'm afraid if you're not prepared to engage with the actual issue and say, how are we going to use our limited funds to get the most for the most people? If you're not really prepared to actually put some suggestions forwards and just constantly demand that government does the work for you, nothing will ever change. Thank you.
Councillor Hathorn.
So I'll just be brief. I think there are tangible things that this council can do. I've got 3 children in local schools and none of them have ever been taught how to clean their teeth. It has never been easier to see videos about this type of thing, but I wouldn't know where to start. So just by speaking to the dentistry profession and coming up with really good quality videos about how to clean your teeth, both with a manual and an electric toothbrush, that would be an unbelievably helpful thing to do. I think this is important for adults as well as children. I've never learned how to clean my teeth with an electric toothbrush despite using it. National Smile Month is the 13th of May to the 13th of June. So it'd be really good if we could, for example, signpost those videos every year. So, you know, it's a start. It's not going to change the world, but there are tangible things we can do, which would be really helpful. I think this is a really good motion. It's a really important issue. And yes, we all feel the pain of tooth pain.
Commendably brief. Councillor Hoy.
Yeah, mine's going to be even briefer. It's not just about NHS dentists. I couldn't get in privately last year. I tried, rang every private dentist in the town and they weren't accepting anyone. So even if you're prepared to pay for it, you can't always get in with a dentist. So it is a widespread problem.
Again, commendably brief. Councillor Cllr.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Councillor Bulat, for bringing this motion. At primary school, we had a dental clinic with a dental nurse, and there were no anaesthetics then. We called her the murder lady. But the benefits have been immense. Now, I don't want to repeat what others have said. I agree with what everybody says, except that dental infections are associated with an increase in inflammation whole life. So the longer something remains untreated, the worse it gets. So this is storing up problems, including strokes, heart disease in later life. It is something that we definitely need to deal with urgency. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Councillor Sanderson, you reserved your right to speak, seconding the motion. Now is that time.
Thank you very much, Chair. I welcome this motion from Councillor Bulat, and I'm happy to second it. And let me begin my remarks by quoting directly from the group, Toothless in Huntingdonshire. I'm delighted to see them here today. And that title leaves you in no doubt how critical they see the situation regarding dentistry services in my division and elsewhere in the county. They state, we need to drive home the desperation and pain that patients are going through when it comes to accessing NHS dental services. As many members may know, Toothless in Huntingdonshire and its national equivalent group were invited to an event at Portcullis House in Westminster after submitting evidence to the Health Select Committee inquiry on NHS dentistry earlier in the year. Those findings were published in July and advised, and I quote, the government needs to undertake urgent and fundamental reform if people are to receive the dental and oral care they need. And as with most things connected to central government, any central government, they highlighted the fact that they were returning to the recommendations made by their predecessor committee some 15 years earlier. These recommendations still haven't been implemented. Initial changes had been made to the NHS dental contract in 2022, but the committee argued that a fundamentally reformed contract needs to be implemented. That's what we need. There are also concerns that the government has not yet engaged with the committee's most recent findings 4 months after their publication. We're all familiar here with the importance of preventative healthcare and early intervention. And that's vital when it comes to oral hygiene, where we do not have fluoride in our tap water here in Cambridgeshire. Early signs of oral problems and regular checkups also encourage medical professionals to intervene and encourage smoking cessation, where advice and guidance to patients on how to achieve this is provided. Felon, of course, has one of the highest levels of smoking in the country. The lack of accessible and affordable dental care also exacerbates our levels of inequality. A Healthwatch Cambridgeshire report released in 2019 shows that between 2017 and 2018, more than 14,000 patients were turned away from dentists, with the highest numbers in Wisbech and Peterborough. The figure for Huntingdonshire was 2,700. And data recently obtained from NHS England and Wales, released on the 20th of January 2022, shows more than 2,500 dentists, nearly 8% of the workforce, stopped treating NHS patients last year. And it seems that we have a contract at the moment that puts the interests of dentists over patient care, with funding at least 30% less than it was more than 10 years ago. Not a single penny of the government spending review last year allocated more funds to NHS dentistry. In other words, there's little incentive for dentists to recruit NHS patients, and it's more lucrative under the existing contract, which was reset as recently as April this year, for dentists to recruit and retain private patients. So what is the way forward? Well, I'll quote Simon Brignall doesn't mind from his group, which I think put forward some excellent ideas. We need an NHS dentist for everybody. We need reforms to the NHS dental contract that would encourage dentists to provide NHS treatments, revenue to cover the 50% of the population who are underfunded by the government, NHS dental treatments to be free at the point of use, people to be prioritised before shareholder dividends, no more privatisation, and an end to the two-tier system. Unless we make these changes, we will just widen the two-tier dental system in our country, something that we've already seen in other countries. So I urge members to vote in favour of this excellent motion by Councillor Bulat today. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. And lastly, Councillor Bulat.
Thank you, Chair. It's really great to hear cross-party support on this. I think I have some talent for cross-party motions and less controversial topics. So thank you so much, Councillor Howitt, in the first place, for highlighting some of more local facts and figures for us, as well as the work that the Integrated Care Board does locally and how we can best engage, especially on children's and with our health watch as well. I think our health scrutiny function, as well as a council through adults and health, is also very important in this respect. To Councillor Bywater, thank you for highlighting your own personal experience using those services. And I think it's what you mentioned about more people seeking treatment in other countries is unfortunately really common. Like most of my friends who are from migrant background just go to their country of origin for dental treatment, even if they've lived here for 20, 30, 40 odd years. And this actually can put pressure on other countries' services as well. So have to think this in the kind of like, international context as well in terms of like healthcare provision. Councillor Slater, thank you for mentioning how councillors can support more this work locally, especially focusing on messages around prevention. And yes, your mention around electric toothbrushes, it can be quite a learned skill for some people. Councillor van der Ven, thank you for highlighting in particular the experience of migrants and refugees. I think for some groups, there's even more unequal access to dental provision. I do agree with Councillor Tierney, it is a bad situation for everyone. I wouldn't say that it's necessarily worse for one group to another, but in terms of the legislation, some of the NHS access, it can be a bit different depending on your status. So Councillor Hathorn, thank you so much for listing that the motion has some tangible benefits and that we all can all work together locally to make some of those changes. I do agree with Councillor Hoy. It is also difficult in private dental provision. I think it's the experience of many people I met as well. So it's not saying it's only we can't get an NHS dentist. I think we have a shortage of dentists overall, but then more and more dentists, NHS dentists in particular, are pushed into private practice. And of course, for those residents who can't afford to go to private practice, we need to ensure that the NHS system is a bit better. Councillor Shaler, thank you for mentioning how it's actually doing this work on prevention, and dental health actually can prevent other complications that can lead from not doing the work on prevention in the first place. And overall, I just in relation to Councillor Tierney's comment, I did work on this motion in the spirit of having something that's not too controversial, that's not too political, that is cross-party. It's a problem that faces all our residents, and I did deliberately try to put some local, and in fact, like at least four local level suggestions we can work on. I think we might have to read the motions a bit more carefully before being against by default on various proposals, but this was my personal opinion. So finally, I would like to thank Councillor Sanderson for seconding the motion and highlighting some of the work done by Toothless in England and the local groups as well. I would like to thank in particular the residents, especially the 3 residents who agreed to share their testimonies today in my opening speech. And I will leave you with this, just this one last statistic for you today. 18% of 5-year-olds in Cambridgeshire have visually obvious dental decay. So let me repeat this, it's 18% of under 5-year-olds in our county. So they're already experiencing problems. It's 1 in 5 of our small children. So this for me, just looking at this, getting this data from our public health team, I just looked at this and I thought, this is simply unacceptable anywhere, let alone in such a wealthy economy. So we do really have to do something on this, of course, locally, of course, it's a national issue as well. And I do genuinely hope that on this topic of NHS dental access and especially prevention, things can indeed only get better. Thank you.
Right, we will now move to the vote. I'm going to take a risk here. There seems to be a general consensus in support of the motion. If anyone disagrees, please raise your hand now. In which case, we will take that as accepted. Thank you very much.